Welcome everyone to this panel session, How Technology Can Bridge the Gap in a Remote World. Over to our panel host, Jarrod.
Hey, thanks, Alicia. And thank you all for joining us again. I hope it's been a productive day so far, but it is my privilege to welcome you to this panel session on how technology can bridge the gap in a remote world, which I know is something that we've all been forced to try to figure out on our own over the last few months. And I'm really interested to see how this has all impacted some of the vendors in the creative operations space. You know, as an industry analyst myself at the Real Story Group, we're constantly watching a number of different marketplaces out there. But the creative ops marketplace is a tricky one. I'm gonna be honest. It's a bit nebulous. It's a bit hard for us to get our hands around because so many different organizations are doing different things under that name, creative ops. You know, everything from email and spreadsheets to some packaged offerings of some really well-known software providers. So, and you know, as far as I can tell, there's really no two creative operations setup that's exactly the same. And so I think this current situation that we all have found ourselves in is going to hopefully accelerate the progress of the creative operations technology world. And at least that's my suspicion as an analyst from where I'm sitting, and I'm curious to get the opinions of our panelists today. Joining me today is Kurt from OpenText, Melinda from Extreme Reach, and Pete from Chili Publish. I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves shortly, but I just wanted to remind all of you who are attending that you have the Q&A panel on your Hubilo interface. Feel free to ask questions as we progress through the session, and I'll get to as many of those as we can. I have a bunch of questions that we've laid out to kind of walk us through this topic, but you know, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit those as we go along. All right, let's get into it. Let's do a bit of introductions to talk about our panelists today. Melinda, do you want to kick us off from your lovely cabin on the mountaintops of North Carolina?
I would love to. Thank you very much, Jarrod. I think that was a terrific setup in terms of no creative ops being the same as anyone else. So I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Extreme Reach. I spent the first decade of my career in ad agencies, doing media strategy. Then I went to A&E television networks and ran for a decade running content creation and our own in-house agency, among other things, and developing a unique creative operation inside of a massive media brand, then into video ad tech, and now over at Extreme Reach. Extreme Reach may be a new name to some of you, not to everyone. We were founded over 12 years ago, early adopter of moving everything about video workflow into the cloud, and over those 12 years have sequentially built every step between from upstream when content is being created on set all the way downstream into it appearing on screens in front of consumers. There's a lot that goes on between those two things, and by building each sequential step, and then today here at this conference for a reason, layering on asset management on top of that as, in a sense, the last capstone of taking where the work flows and then adding into it everything that a asset management provider needs to do to serve all the various teams. So we're deeply embedded in the marketing ecosystem and come at it from a purpose-built video platform. And
Excellent.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Kurt, everyone knows OpenText, but what are you representing here today?
Yeah, thanks, Jarrod. So for everyone, my name's Kurt, and I'm based out of San Francisco, California, and I'm part of the customer success organization within OpenText that's specifically responsible for our Hightail product. And Hightail is, for those of you who aren't aware, Hightail is a SaaS platform for file sharing and creative content collaboration, right? So we have broad set of customers that span consumers all the way up to B2B business customers, right? And so from the customer success side, my background is obviously in developing programs for enablement and engagement across both those consumer audience and our B2B customers. Really looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Kurt. Pete, how about Chili Publish? Tell us a little bit about you and what you're representing today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pete. I'm the content strategist at Chili Publisher. So my background has been technology for as long as I can remember, with companies like Apple and Creo. And I've been with Chili Publisher for a long time. I think I was employee number 5 or 6, based in the HQ in Belgium. So if you think of Chili Publisher and what it does, some of you may know it already. It's enabling technology that fits in a MarTech stack that allows people to simplify and automate their graphics. And we work with companies like DAM vendors and PIM vendors as an add-on technology that enables self-service. That's about it.
Great. Well, thank you all for volunteering your time today. We definitely appreciate it. I think this topic, like I said at the outset, is so relevant to every single person, and this is even before the pandemic. I think in the creative ops space, things were changing to begin with, right? Things were moving, just the nature of creative ops technology. You're taking something that, years ago used to be this physical process that we all just handed off job jackets to and actually handed work flowing through from person to person. But, the rise of the creative ops space was inherently digital, right? And it was bringing things online. And so I think now that we're, like I said, forced to be remote, I think we're forced to make some changes to the way we work. And I think that should help the space. So first question to all of you is, what was the biggest impact that you've seen to your business that the pandemic caused? Any direct impacts that you saw right away or maybe has changed over the last few months? Pete, want to kick us off?
From where we're sitting, and we have a front row seat at a bunch of different projects. From where we were sitting, it was the ultimate stress test. It was all of the inefficiencies and all of the things that were not examined very deeply were laid bare. You mentioned it was a process, and it was a transactional process with handoffs and with approvals and many different stakeholders. But it was a linear process, had a start and a finish. And what we're seeing now is that went out the window, and it's all been compressed, where a lot of people have to collaborate in real time at the same time. And some organizations were ready for it conceptually, and they just had to execute really quickly. But some organizations didn't have that mindset yet. They were still using technology to optimize that I'm going to say old-fashioned process. So that was very clear to us. It was the ultimate kick in the shins and wake-up call. Like there was an evolution going on in MarTech as we saw it, but all of a sudden, anything that wasn't optimal was very, very clear.
How about you, Melinda?
I agree with everything Pete just said. Because we're embedded sort of in the entire workflow of how content gets created and then ingested, readied, prepared, deployed, there was this snowball effect right away, because the halt in productions, in actual, live productions for the commercial world and for brand content just stopped overnight. So the snowball effect of that is that there was an immediate pivot to first of all, to stopping and pausing marketing that was out there. It sounds easy, just tell someone to stop running that ad. It's not easy if you haven't done the work to create that seamless supply chain. Luckily, most brands I think have. So there was an ability to stop right away. Then you saw this pause in ideation and creation, and that involved needing to go into the archive brands that were set up to do this could do this from anywhere in the cloud and assess what content you had, what had made it to the cutting room floor, what that might have a second life, what sort of assets do we have. So that was the next part of the snowball, was what can I work with? Then there was the talent and rights. You find a piece of footage that you can use, and you have to intrinsically lock that with, can I use it? And what do I need to do to re-up the use of that so that I can assemble a new message that's tone sensitive to what was going on in the world. So, you know, when you sit at the kind of the center of the plumbing and the asset workflow underneath, we saw this obviously immediate pivot to understand how to market in this world. And the ramifications of not doing it right or not being sensitive to the moment were big, as we know, and the power of consumers to cancel you overnight was pretty powerful. And then as, you know, other things happened during the pandemic on top of the virus itself, you know, there's just a constant shifting. It's like a preparing to pivot at every moment, every day. And so that impacted us. Luckily, because we're in the cloud, we moved 800 people from being in offices to remote almost overnight. There have some hardware in different places that are, you know, redundant systems. But because you're able to do that, and we have cloud technology plus, frankly, even more importantly during this time, humans, because it's a human business, and helping during this pivot at a time where everyone was just, you know, dealing with things we've never done before, allowed for the illumination of where workflow wasn't seamless enough for some clients, and then how powerful it is, having created it, having no idea we were going to need to lean on it so heavily.
Right. Kurt, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, I think about the hand that we were dealt with the pandemic, and it really being this big forcing function that that caused, you know, businesses across the board to really re-examine how they're operating, their workflows and their processes. And, you know, for OpenText Hightail specifically, right, it was a big mix of positive and negative impacts, right? We, as a solution, you know, we work with businesses of all shapes and sizes, from Fortune 500s and the biggest brands and agencies, all the way down to mom and pop shops and freelancers and independent contractors, right? And so there's a broad spectrum of impacts across those different types of businesses, right? On the brand and agency side, they might be, you know, tightening their purse strings and tightening budgets, which may mean less work for independent contractors and freelancers, right? And so we may see some attrition from them off of our platform as their workload diminishes. And on the other hand of that, we have big companies looking to move workflows that were papered or in-person workflows and take them digital and take them into the cloud. And so we see some uptick there. Spectrum of impacts across all of the different types of consumers and users that we really serve.
Yeah, that's great. Pete, I love your phrase. This is going to cause all this technology to get stress tested, because, you know, and I couldn't agree with that more. And if we don't get it as professionals, you know, I think all this technology, like Zooms of the world, you know, the students who are going back to school, they're gonna really stress test it. You know, they're gonna find every loophole that's known to man. I heard a story yesterday that some group of kids got together and actually went on to the app store and rated the test taking app that the school had published, and they gave it so many negative ratings so it would get delisted off the app store. And you know, hopefully we don't have to deal with that in the creative ops world yet, but I think there's something interesting happening with all these people having to use it in different ways and really putting it through that stress test. I love that.
Absolutely. We have a customer in Antwerp. I visited with them a couple of days ago, and they gamed the system in the sense that
Really?
they had a prototype of technology ready, and then the pandemic hit, and they said, okay, what do people need right now? What does every company in the world need right now? And it was signage. You need to change behavior. So you need to remind people that they need to, like, keep their distance, put their mask on, wash their hands. And a lot of signs were required. So they quickly built a signage generation platform on their prototype technology. And within weeks and months, they now have 3,500 fresh leads of companies that they didn't know before, and that have now tried their technology to build branded assets. Because a sign is nothing more than a branded asset, right?
Sure.
So there's companies out there that are taking this in their stride and they go like, they re-examine everything they're doing and they're getting some pretty spectacular results out of it.
That's awesome. To stay on that theme for a second, anyone else see any surprises in the way that your clients have used your technology, because they had to work in a different way?
Well, for us, I mean, the surprises were sort of the ingenuity you guys have just talked about in examples, but the sort of mad creativity, I think, seeing things and how fast the in-house agencies at brands, and in most cases work together with the creative folks externally, came up with ideas where I'm constantly going, how did they come up with that? Probably the best example I have is, and it's, in public domain, is the Groundhog Day commercial that you saw in the Super Bowl, which is, took a lot of obviously negotiating and the deal with Bill Murray and the footage and all of that stuff. And it was a great ad. They pulled that out, they reassembled it, and it was just madly creative. And that, there were so many parts to making that happen. It's not as simple as saying, let's pull that out and slightly tweak it and put it out there during a pandemic. There's, there's talent, there's getting it ready, cleared, there's traffic that's telling it where to go and what, the media team is madly changing the media buy, and then video ad serving is a whole different delivery path. So,
Sure.
I think the biggest surprise is literally the sort of creativity and having clients also see how easy it was to fill gaps in workflow when before they thought it was like change management. So, it both, I think Pete was saying it, or maybe it was you, Kurt, the impact was both positive and negative because it illuminated almost like with a blue light or UV. When I was a kid and I would brush my teeth and then you put this light on and showed where you didn't do a good job. Like the pandemic immediately, showed those gaps, but it's hard. And humans think, it's working okay. We're figuring it out. But how quickly you can stop those gaps with technology where critical thinking isn't required was pretty inspiring and continues to be.
Yeah. Or any surprises in the way Hightail customers are using it?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, I think as a service provider, it's making us re-examine what we thought was the primary value proposition of our product. Right. I mean, as customers come in and they look at the solution and say, hey, everything that you're telling me about how I can use this is great, but I can also use it this way. Right. And an example with Hightail is people using our service not just as sort of a collaboration system to work on content creation, but as a real-time sort of a boardroom, right? Where they can post content and everyone can come into the same place at the exact same time, not needing to work on their own hours, but at the exact same time, all be viewing the same content, all have their voice and feedback be seen at the same time, right? And so it's just causing us to re-examine the way we talk to prospects, we talk to existing customers, we identify workflows that they can bring into the solution and bring into the cloud, right?
So I know you all kind of hinted at this, but I'm just going to explicitly ask it just to see if there's some examples you want to point out here. But what are some of the negative things that happened because of the pandemic, other than the obvious negative things? But as it relates to your technology, were there negative surprises? And Kurt, you kind of hinted a little bit there. A lot of people's jobs have been affected, right? And people are shifting to people's roles in different ways, and that's certainly a painful negative one. But what other things?
Yeah, I don't like to use the word negative. I like to use the word challenge, right? Because challenge feels like something you can overcome, right?
I'm an analyst. I use negative all the time.
I think for us, one of the big challenges is the fact that companies right now are really kind of in scramble mode, right? If we think about what's going on, they're scrambling to find new ways to work. But not just new ways to work, but new ways to thrive, right? It's never enough to just status quo and work. They need, even given the situation that we're in, companies need to grow. They need to thrive. And so, we think about, we've mentioned over and over again this idea of moving processes that were in person or papered or whatever, and moving them to the internet, to the cloud. And so when we think about companies being forced to move these in-person collaboration processes into a digital solution, and they're not just wanting to move those processes, they're wanting to move those processes and make them smoother and more efficient, right? And so, when they're looking at evaluating technology solutions, they're not just looking to replicate workflows. They're looking to actually optimize those workflows. And so inherently that presents a challenge, right? But those are positive challenges. Those are challenges that we want to help those customers overcome, and we want to show them why the technology that we offer and that the other folks on this panel offer is actually a better way to work than what they were doing previously.
Yeah, how about you, Pete?
Absolutely. I mean, what we've seen is a clear demand from the user, where the user was in long time ago, the user was an appendix and it was a nuisance, right? We optimized processes for the benefit of the company and the company alone, and the user was left to deal with suboptimal user experiences. I mean, I remember those days when, the late 90s where you didn't have a say, right?
Sure.
What we're seeing now is users are demanding more autonomy. So they want to be self-reliant, and they want to be able to take all these processes that used to be more transactional, and they want to be able to create or to finish the work that they need to do themselves without any intervention, without waiting. But that puts a lot of challenge on the teams that are responsible for rolling that out, because the customer expectations, or the user expectations, I should say, are much greater now. If you look at the complexity of the things that are done online, that people are doing by themselves, like setting up a multi-person video call, it's the standard, it's the norm. And I remember not too long ago, only a handful of people in every company were comfortable setting that up and running that. You can tell by people buying all the equipment they need to do better Zoom calls, etc. So there's this demand for that same kind of almost B2C type quality and intuitive interfaces everywhere, which puts certain projects under stress because they have to now roll that out to a large audience.
And just to, sorry to jump in there, but I think that is actually such an important point of like the idea of like process focused services and applications versus productivity focused. I mean, users are focused on productivity, where businesses tend to be focused on process, right? And so you got to figure out a way to bridge that gap. And the last thing that I would mention around that is, all of this is again happening so fast, and companies are scrambling to find these new technologies and put them in place. But I always like to take it back to us as the service provider. With a company trying to move so fast to get a technology in place, the idea of adoption and usability often tends to be a little bit of an afterthought. And I think it's important for us as service providers to take on some of that responsibility in ensuring that our services are easy to adopt, that they're intuitive, and that we set up frameworks to assist those companies with those processes of adoption and engagement.
Melinda, anything to add on this one?
I think from our vantage point, because we're such a, we're full spectrum managed service, and many of our customers use us in that way with very white glove managed service business. I think for a couple reasons, but not everyone in the entire marketing ecosystem is tech savvy and tech forward. And so you saw people, first of all, in all our lives, we were anxious in general, right, as humans on the earth. And then you had people who were couldn't say to their coworker, how do I do this? Or extreme reaches, I've got them on the screen and we're trying to figure out how to move that asset from here to here. So I don't, the challenge fell a lot on our support team and our account managers, who were suddenly even more so holding people's hands through all hours of the day and night. And we'll do that no matter what. But, for anyone who was in the last 2 days for the Festival of DAM, there was so much conversation about needing to move asset management or DAM out of isolation and into the ecosystem. And that's going to take a while, right? And I find this, for myself running a marketing team, the challenge of the overnight move to remote is that reimagination usually happens in person to some degree with whiteboards and building on each other and helping each other not focus on the anxiety of what it would take to get there, but on the building of ideas. And so, you know, I think we still see a challenge where we could be doing all aspects of a workflow from start to finish, end to end, but with different entities contracting different parts. And so we feel that pain because we know that our customers could work smarter. And so the challenge was even more so to connect people who might not even know each other across a broad, for big brands, not only in that company, but across their agency portfolio, and just help deal with the urgent situation of pulling ads, stopping ads, recreating ads, getting talent right to getting it out to the world. So, you know, I think stress testing is we're very proud of having been stress tested. I don't think we would have wished it, you know, on the world, but it helped us feel like we're future-proofed, because I think now more than ever, what is next? You know, you have to be prepared for anything, and media landscape is complex enough, let alone what happens around marketing that requires them to pivot on a dime. So, you know, it's been a interesting time.
Sure has. I'm going to ask a question from our audience now. Melinda, you just mentioned that the last 2 days we had the Festival of Damn, and not surprisingly, some of those Damn folks made it over to the creative operations side. So I think we play nice together.
We're making progress.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. But to that point, you know, the question that was asked is, you know, are the current circumstances leading to helping individuals within enterprises kind of bolster their case for DAM? You know, have you seen some of your clients say, you know, we've conceptually known we needed DAM, but this has kind of helped me make the case in my organization? We'll start with DAM, but I can also take that to, you know, more how as it relates to your particular projects. Are you seeing people be able to justify new technology in general, you know, as it comes to?
Well, we have, absolutely, because the pain, you know, it's unfortunate that progress happens generally when the pain becomes really obvious, whether it's a rights infraction or a missed, you know, late to market because of the delays in manual handoffs and things. So, you know, again, we wish that the world would preempt with reimagining ways to mitigate risk, but definitely saw progress in the ability, even if it was just more collaboration between previous silos in our business, whether it is talent and rights with media planners. You know, they were given the creative and didn't really have to understand what it means to be in compliance. And so I think it did accelerate all that. And that will be a good thing on the other side of all this, I think, for the industry. I don't know that it's solved. I heard a lot of discussion over the last 2 days about not just the fight for getting the investment and the dollars for DAM systems, but the people. There were so many, what they sort of self-called themselves Lone Rangers. And I think that what's going to be important as we move forward for all of the companies who support brands in the MarTech stack, and there's a lot of them, that there has to be equal parts devotion to advanced technology and the humans who power it. You know, and it was said a lot over the last couple of days, but I think, you know, we have to support our customers in ways that aren't always there. And that's the way we're going to together collectively, I think, get progress in the industry.
Absolutely. How about Pete?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a couple of projects where people are realizing that and this is specifically people that are replacing a DAM, that are looking at their usage statistics from their previous system, and they did all this investment and then all this change management, and in the end, not enough people are using it. So they're beginning to measure success as how often is this DAM used by how many users, how many monthly active users do I have? And again, once you can put a layer on top of that does the smart templating, this is of course what we do. Once you could put that layer on top of that, you'll see a lot more people find their way to DAM that wouldn't be exposed to it before, because it was still a fairly manual and labor-intensive process. Whereas building an on-brand asset, in my opinion, should not be any more difficult than doing stuff in the other industries that have been transformed by digital technology. Think travel and banking. Travel was a specialized thing. You had travel agents, like you had dam specialists, and you had bankers, right? Now, those things are, for me, as a user, I authenticate, I make a couple of choices, and I'm done. And we think that the DAM users should have that same kind of ease. You say, this is me, this is what I need right now, and I don't want to wait for it to be built by somebody. I don't want to start like a big workflow process. I just want the technology to spit out what I need right now because I've got stuff to do. The growth statistics or the growth expectations haven't changed, so we're going to have to do a lot more with less budget going forward.
Great. And what about Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, I think Melinda and Pete did a really good job in answering the question sort of specific to DAM. I'll take it slightly in a different direction and talk about it sort of in terms of some of these other creative tools. Specifically, you know, my expertise is around sort of collaboration tools, right? And, you know, I think what we're seeing is that there certainly is more interest in sort of some of these collaboration type systems. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that that these type of solutions really help teams, and I use that word kind of loosely, teams, feel more connected to each other, right? We're no longer in the same physical space, right? We're no longer able to go into a boardroom or into a workroom and, you know, pull up a PowerPoint presentation or a bunch of designs and have this dialogue around it. And so people are looking for technology that provides that in a digital way, right? And so, and when we think about the word teams, right? I mean, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was a very narrow idea. It was your colleagues, you know, but now a team means so much more than that. A team doesn't just mean your day-to-day work colleagues, but it also means your customers and the agencies that you're working with, and all of your subcontractors and people that you hire. So figuring out technology that allows those people to feel really connected to each other when they're in different places in the world, in different offices, in different homes, is just so incredibly important, given the way that work is probably gonna look for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll add my 2 cents here, just because, you know, we at Real Story Group, we get pulled in to helping organizations select technology all the time, right? That's what we do. And I can honestly say over the last few months, we've seen this like meteoric rise of DAM selections and customer data platform selection. So CDPs and DAMs, but I don't think there's a coincidence there, because you think about what builds experiences: content and data, and its experiences are when those two things come together, right? And people are really rethinking their foundational elements of their stacks, and they're saying, okay, we have plans to exist in an omni-channel world. We got to get our house in order. We got to get our foundations in order. We got our assets and our data in order. But this just accelerated everything, right? And the companies that had this roadmap in place have kind of just accelerated everything, moved it forward on their roadmap, and it's just been pretty amazing to see that acceleration. So. To that point, when I talk about your overall MarTech stack, you know, I think, you know, Melinda, when you were talking earlier, you know, you talked about how Extreme Reach has you do have largely an end-to-end solution, but none of you have technology that exists in isolation, right? So all of your technology exists within within a larger technology ecosystem within every single client that you work with, right? So I'm curious, in more of a remote world, how's that been? You know, working with your clients, ultimately to work with other vendors, right? And to do these integrations and make sure work flows appropriately and in meaningful ways at every single integration point. So has that changed at all? Is it the same? You know, what are you seeing from there? Pete, want to take this one first?
We've not seen a big change, because frankly, that was our DNA from the start. We've always been an API-driven product or API-driven technology that was built to exist within an ecosystem. Like you could not buy Chili Publisher and run it as a solution. It has to be part of something else. And sometimes it was a mom and pop web to print solution back in the days. And as we evolved, they got more and more into the MarTech space and into the brand management space. So for us, it hasn't made a big difference. What we are seeing is that there are more people at the table in meetings. There are more stakeholders, and the customer is expecting an end-to-end, do everything solution in the end.
Definitely. How about Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, you know, anytime customers are bringing in new technology, it's never happening in a silo, right? They always want things, you know, to fit together. And we know nothing ever fits together perfectly, right? So there's always a challenge when customers want to talk about that, because there's, you know, nothing ever just fits together like that, right? I mean, I think traditionally from the perspective of Hightail, right, there was always customer demands to integrate into systems like DAMs or into content repositories. But I think what we're seeing with some of these changes to the remote or hybrid workforce is there's other demands that we hadn't really maybe considered before that we're now being forced to figure out ways to integrate with. Solutions like project management tools, or like chat applications. You know, with the reliance on Teams and Zoom and solutions like that, customers want all of their systems to be able to integrate with those now in some way, shape, or form. So it's just causing us to reevaluate what our priorities are in terms of the integration options that we provide to our end users and our customers.
Melinda?
Yeah. So we're in a unique spot because in a lot of cases for a lot of years, we have been ostensibly an end-to-end solution for the marketing team in terms of campaign workflow for the creative assets, a sort of single supply chain for the creative itself. But that's not enough, as everyone's beginning to realize. And so we've always embraced completely open sort of connector strategy. And I think the industry was sort of moving there, and a lot of talk the last 2 days about it's a dam at the core of a larger picture, a program. So we've been a complete program for a very specific thing, which is the expensive, lots of talent and payments and union requirements and stuff in the TV and social and anywhere video runs now today. But that alone doesn't get you to where brands ultimately need to be with their data connected, with other aspects of PIM or other aspects connected. And so, you know, we are seeing more discussions, I think it was accelerated by what's going on right now and the sort of race to accelerate more seamless workflow that humans then use and manage, especially in the social area. We're seeing a lot of discussion around, and brands saying, now can you connect what you do for us straight into the stream of, say, social publishing? And so whether it's working with companies like Sprinkler or whoever it is, that's like an exciting next frontier to cover, is how do you make sure every single delivery path out of a program that manages the most complex type, I would argue, which is video. That's where we're seeing a lot of conversation. I think we were headed that way anyway. I think hopefully, as we all look for silver linings in this, that one of them is an acceleration of a reimagination of how DAM fits in a broader thing and how it can be stronger through connectors.
So, question from our audience is around the new normal. So they said, are we actually ever going to go back to normal, or is the old normal finished? Is this new way of working? Is this our new way of working? I know that's probably above all of our pay grades to have a real answer for that, but you all have opinions on that as it relates to your technology. You know, these changes that you've described today, are they here to stay?
I believe so. I believe so. I think we're not going to go back to the way things were. What I believe is happening now is there's a lot of companies are gearing up to market more aggressively. So you'll have a much more intense competition for attention for audiences. So the thing that you need to keep in mind is that people are going to be more critical on what they find relevant. So they'll filter out a lot more. And the way to make things relevant is data. We talked about PIM data, about products, but also consumer data, analytics, whatever type of data you can find that is relevant to your audience needs to be able to be used for almost like real-time updates of all of your assets and all of the things that you're generating for that audience, because that's going to be a very crowded space.
Yeah, to that, I just want to piggyback on that because that's been a topic that we've been talking about so much. It's like, especially in the creative ops world, I think it's really relevant because oftentimes we think about it as this one-way flow of information, but when we talk about analytics, you got to figure out what's working and then round trip that back so that the next time someone goes and creates something, they can do so with some more information. And that whole circular, feedback loop is so critical, and that's the holy grail that I think everyone's trying to get to. So I love.
And the audience is basically leaving hints left, right, and center as to what works and what they like.
Absolutely.
The only thing we need to do is fundamentally close the loop once and for all. I've never seen it really done fully. But I believe all the building blocks are in place.
Yes, totally agree. How about you, Melinda?
Well, I mean, I'm an eternal optimist and see silver linings. So I would argue, like,
You're in the right place.
Who would ever want to go back to normal? Normal should be defined as like living our best life with professionally. Here we're talking about, and it keeps changing. So it's like saying, are we ever going to go back to 1986? Yeah, I'm aging myself. No. So I think what my hope is and wish for the industry is that this, sudden jolt out of things poured cold water over status quo, and that we won't ever go back, because there's lots of things we should never go back to as it relates to the topic we're talking about today. I mean, technology can do amazing things if we just apply it, even though we're a business and an industry that has been around forever with still lots of legacy ways within it. So, my hope is we go back to the things we love and other things are just made better. So that's my positive point of view.
Kurt, are you positive?
Yeah, I am positive, right? I mean,
Good.
I think from the perspective of the way, content creation and content collaboration is going to function. That I don't think we're ever going to 100% go back to the way we were doing it. And I think that's a good thing, right? I think that we're recognizing that there's technology out there that can make these processes better. We can take some of that process that was always in person, always papered, and move it to digital, and that's going to make us more efficient, right? One of the things that keeps me up at night that I'm always thinking about is, eventually we are going to have a little bit of a regression back to what quote unquote we're calling normal. And if that means that, remote workforces are not, go back to sort of a hybrid workforce where some people are in an office and some aren't. One thing that I think about is, how do we ensure that the processes that we built and developed for our customers to fit a remote world apply when we go to a hybrid world? How can we ensure that everyone's voice, that everyone's contributions is maintained from what we had in this sort of remote digital process when people inevitably go back to having some level of face-to-face and we have sort of more of this hybrid workforce?
Yeah, that's great. And this question came in right at the outset, but I wanted to save it for the end because I think it's a good one to end on. But we only have 2 minutes, so I'm going to ask you to keep your comment short on that. And you kind of got into that a little bit of where I wanted to go, Kurt. The question was, what are the key learnings that we can use to future-proof our environments for the next global setback, right? We feel like we're having setbacks all the time, so we know something else is going to be around the corner, but are there certain things that we can do to set ourselves up to be ready for the next one? And again, keep it short on this one and we'll wrap up there.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think it can be sort of a mindset thing, right? And maintaining this really flexible mindset of like what makes up a good process or good workflow. I think we had really maybe rigid ideas beforehand, and now we're being forced to think about it a little differently. And so I think maintaining that mindset might be, one of the most important things that we can do.
Yes, on my end, it's we used to work in a problem solution kind of way. And that's not going to work anymore because we don't know what the problems are going to be next week. So we need to shift our thinking in a technology capability kind of way. Even if we don't need all of the stuff that technology can do for us today,
Sure.
You need to make sure that it's flexible enough to kind of react to any kind of changes, because there will be more.
Absolutely. And Melinda, want to wrap us up?
And sure. So I would say that you should connect every single codependent step in a workflow that doesn't require critical thinking, and then never stop looking for what still isn't connected. I think we have to get our infrastructure house in order. I thought I'll bring it back to the start of our day here with Melody, who I found so inspiring. And she talked a lot about, you can have the best creative idea. If it's not executable, it's nothing. And I think we're an industry that so races to the fun of talking about the creative ideas and the sizzly fun parts of our business that we have still not built the infrastructure we need to future-proof the execution of these things for the marketing world.
Great. Well, right on time. Thank you all so much. You guys, I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you to everyone who joined us on virtually with all your great questions. They're really fantastic. So thank you for that. But Melinda, Kurt, and Pete, it was a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you down the road. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Yep.
Bye, everyone.